Okay, I want to talk to you all a little bit today about what to do when I find out that I've compromised my integrity as a leader and as an organization. In our last video, I spoke to you some about what I feel is the importance of integrity as an overarching value in our system. I don't think that we can relegate it to the ranks of other values, because it's those other core values that actually define what integrity means for us. And if I were to boil it down into a simple statement, as a leader, integrity is who we say we are for our people. It's a line in the sand that we declare that I am fill in the blank. As a parent, I would fill in that statement with I am a mentor, a coach, someone who is present and guiding my children. And as often as I hope to live up to that standard, there is the possibility that there are going to be days when I'm tired or I'm sidetracked and I lose sight of that pursuit. And I have to admit that I'm out of integrity, that maybe I'm not present with my kids like I ought to be. Maybe I'm not taking the time to coach them and to guide them and think long term about their development. It's easy to be liked in the moment and to sacrifice those things, but if we really stay focused on who we want them to be over the course of time, then it means that we need to operate in a different fashion. And if I choose to shortcut that mission or to sacrifice those values, then I'm out of integrity. We talked about the cost of integrity a little bit, or what happens if you lose integrity, and it's incredibly costly. Integrity equates to trust. It, in my opinion, is the reason why most customers will continue to do business with you. You may be able to get them in the front door and have them conduct business with you as an organization based on advertising, based on pricing, but to continue to keep them to come to you and your service and your product is built largely on trust. How are you taking care of them? What is the integrity of your product? Can they trust that it's going to do what you say it's going to do? Especially if you're in an industry that is highly dependent upon the safety of what it is that you provide. People need to know that there's not going to be liabilities that come back on them for putting that to work in their industry. So integrity is everything. But because integrity has such a high place and is supported by ideal values, values that comprise the culture of our company, if we're shooting high enough in terms of the excellence that we profess and our desire to be really the best in class in all ways, there's going to be times where we fall out of integrity, where we do not live up to who we say we are for our own team members or for our customer. And so the question to follow up the last video is really what do we do when we find ourselves in that situation where our integrity seems to be damaged or waning, or maybe we're just staring down the barrel of a gun and it looks like we've lost everything. Is there a way, once you've stepped out of integrity, to restore that and maintain trust? Best example that we've seen generationally in terms of how to handle a crisis of a loss of integrity. And this goes back a few years. I was probably about 6 years old when this happened. Many of you may remember the story of the Tylenol crisis, where 7 people in the Chicago area took cyanide-laced Tylenol tablets and ended up losing their lives. To this day, nobody knows who, whether it was an individual or a group of people that laced that Tylenol and repackaged the vials with the cyanide-laced Tylenol. But the fact of the matter was it shook our nation. Tylenol owned 35% of the market share of all painkillers at the time, so it existed in almost every household. And even at a time when the media, social media didn't exist and your media was relegated to newspapers and the television, within 1 week they say 90% of our nation knew what had taken place in Chicago. So the damage to the brand of Tylenol, it was done, and it was done in a hurry. And so Tylenol had to figure out how are they going to respond to this. This is obviously the type of crisis when you're looking at the kind of money and influence that Johnson & Johnson had. They were the ones who market and own Tylenol as a brand. They needed to respond quickly, they needed to respond efficiently, and they needed to communicate really well. So this was the kind of scenario that could do long-lasting and permanent damage to your brand if it's not handled correctly. Fortunately for Johnson & Johnson, their chairman, James Burke, reacted very quickly, formed a 7-member strategy team. And the guidance that team received from Burke was first to answer this question: how do we protect the people? You see, Johnson & Johnson in their mission statement had already declared that their main mission with Tylenol was to enhance the public's well-being or health. And from the beginning of their existence, their number one concern was the public health of their people, of their customers. And so if they don't respond in a way to uphold that, even though they found themselves as a brand that is at least temporarily not trusted, people were afraid to pick that up, and for fear of what could be in those containers. Even though they found themselves in that position, they still had to continue to uphold their mission and to fight for the health of their consumers. And so the questions that James Burke asked was, how do we protect the people? And secondly, how do we save this product? They still believed that they had a product that the world needed, that was largely beneficial, but the only way that product would be used and consumed by Americans is that they could trust that their health was not going to be put in danger. So they had largely found out that the pharmacies that have been distributed with this cyanide-laced Tylenol was located entirely in Chicago. And there could have been a temptation to only pull the Tylenol from the shelves in Chicago. Johnson & Johnson decided not to do that at a cost of nearly $100 million with no pressure really on them to do so. They pulled all the Tylenol off of every shelf in America and sent out communication that nobody should take this Tylenol. They made reparations to the victims of the families. They jumped on very quickly with a triple seal packaging that we now see and use today, which became an industry standard. It didn't just help Tylenol, but it helped all other medicine manufacturers to deliver a product that is much safer. They instituted a random audit of that packaging that went out to distributors so that there was proof that these batches had not been tampered with in the future. And they communicated. And the lesson for each of us is here you find somebody that was out of integrity with their consumer. Their product had some quality tampering. Yes, was it their fault? As leaders, we would say, yes, it was our fault because we didn't have these tamper-proof packages in place beforehand. But ultimately, they were the victim of a terrorist act. And any one of us could find ourselves in that same situation, and we could throw our hands up and say, well, what could I have done about it? Johnson & Johnson took ownership and said there is something that we can do about it. And in order to reestablish the trust, to bring ourselves back into integrity with our consumers, these are the things we need to do. And we cannot be afraid to communicate about what's taken place, and we cannot be afraid to take it on the chin from a financial perspective, and then exercise some trust that if we do these things, we will prove to our consumer that we are people that stand behind our mission, that care about the public health of our consumers, and we'll find ourselves back in integrity again. So obviously Tylenol is still around today, and within shortly after this crisis, their market share fell from 35% to 8%. Took a big hit. It was a costly thing in their history. Within 12 months, they had rebounded 100% back up to 35% of the market share. So what do we do if we find ourselves out of integrity? What if one of our core values collapses or fails? Is there a way to get back in integrity? Absolutely yes. But it takes transparency. It takes a willingness to admit that yes, we are out of integrity. And it takes some definite, guided, certain steps to make sure that we restore that which we are committed to. One of the things that we cannot do, we cannot run from it, we cannot hide from it, we cannot compromise those core values on the back end of these issues. We have to stand up under them, take our licks, and trust the fact that if our team members and our consumers see that we really eat, drink, and breathe these values that comprise our integrity, that everything's going to be all right in the end. So I hope the example that we've seen here with Tylenol will be something that in principle we can apply as leaders, that will continue to use our core values in such a way that we'll be able to see very quickly and respond efficiently when it comes to protecting our integrity. Because when we protect our integrity, we maintain our trust and we maintain our business. We continue to get to employ our people and take care of their families with a paycheck, and continue to be industry leaders in whatever it is that we're doing. It is and continues to be that important. But if we stumble, if we fall, if we trip up a little bit, it is absolutely possible to continue to maintain that trust. But we're going to have to take some active, proactive steps to make sure that trust continues. And we'll continue to grow together. It's all about growth. It's all about a conversation. It's all about trying to step into leadership in ways that we can benefit our people and our consumers and ourselves as well as we grow as human beings and influencers in this world. Have a great day.